Okay, time to get back onto my race bike finally. Got a couple days to get it all together, so time to get going on it. It's now 6 o'clock at night, so everybody's gone for the day. So I get to work on my crap. So these are two flywheels that I have made up. And these are all the parts right here going to put together. So we had it mocked up before, so now we're just going to put it all together and tighten it up for real this time. So these are all my modified parts here I've had made up over the years. So these are all turned down right here to run big roller bearings in there instead of stock needle bearings like Harley uses. So like silk crank pin. That's my S&S Supreme rod. And we have the space and stuff here I made up for taking up the gap from using only one rod. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this thing all up. Put it in a press over there and torque it down and then true it. So you've seen that in my videos before, so I'm not going to show it. I'm just going to go do it, so I'll be back when I get this thing all buttoned up. Okay, finally got this thing trued up. So fighting it for a little while now. So definitely not happy about getting trued. That happens when you over torque everything like I did on this. So anyway, it's not moving very much now. I'm making new crank pin nuts here so I can torque them a little bit more. I went up putting torquing up the main or the sprocket shaft over here quite a bit too. So it's hard to see in there, but it's got a big nut just like the one on here. So anyway, it's really hard getting these things trued up when you really over torque everything. So the crank pin nuts I pulled down about 375, 380. The left side over here I pulled about 350, and the right side over here I get about 180 out of it. So for an iron head motor, that's extremely high numbers. It's even high for a big twin. But anyway, it's in there. I lost a little bit of my rod clearance I had in here. Doesn't have too much in here, so next time this is apart, I'll give it an extra 10 or 15 more thou clearance. I have to trim my spacers here a little bit. That's how much I torqued this thing down. It squeezed them up probably 30 thou at least, so definitely nice and tight. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and take this out and go put it in the crank. In the cases, and we'll continue on. Okay, I'm working on my cases here. Right now we're putting studs in here for the cylinder bases. And I had these custom made here. So this is your stock Harley stud right here. And these are the ARP studs that I bought. And you can see how they're a little bit longer. So I had to get these re-threaded. So from here up on my thumb has been recut. So they only had 3/4 inch of thread right here, so I had to get these all cut. These are hardened, so I had to be cut with a carbide cutter. So you can see that the stock stud's right here, and with the ARP now it's almost the same length as stock down here at the bottom. So it's about half a turn shorter, but depending on where you lay it. So anyway, I had these cut. So I'm taking them and bottoming out completely into the case. So we're getting maximum thread into our case here. So we're running these things in here this deep. So it'll give some good holding power. I still don't like these studs because the damn things are made undersized. See, that's supposed to be a press fit in there. It's kind of stupid how they make studs. Damn automotive don't know how to make anything right. So right here they start to get a little tighter, but not much. They didn't cut these a thou over like they should have. They just cut them on standard. ARP cuts their stuff loose, so it just rattles in the hole. So all your automotive stuff's made that way. This is supposed to be a press fit where it will not screw into the case without being forced in. So see, it goes. You have to force it. It's done already. So this has to be forced in all the way in like it should be. So anyway, the way I'm fixing that is I just put lots of red Loctite on it and hope for the best. That's all I can do. We'll pull this all down, at least have some decent amount of thread engagement, so that's all we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these studs in here, clean this case up a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and put the crank in it. Alright, before I put this all together, way to clean everything all up. Scrape all your gasket surfaces off here. Wipe the cases down one more time, make sure you have no dirt and crap on them. And make sure everything's pretty much ready to go. So, next thing I do is I gotta go ahead and lubricate all my bearings up here. Just make sure it's all pre-lubed, so when you first start this pig up, it'll be a bit of oil and everything. Don't forget to put your washer right in there, it goes in there. So I went and gathered up my hardware here and my steel rear motor mount. So, get all my case hardware, some of it's right here, some of it's over here. This here's my baffle screen. That goes in there like this. Let's take the oil off the flywheels until it's almost had no damage to it over its life. Almost no damage. Only a few spots. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get this all lubed up. Similar crank into here, and then we'll come back and show you where we're at. Okay, we've got the crank in here. Cases are bolted together. Somewhere over there in the dark. Motor mount's all up on there. So I'm working on my windscreen right now. So I just put 4 screws here in the back of the stock case here. So simple. And I pick up 2 screws here, and I don't have any room in here, so I didn't put any there. So I didn't do any welding to this, I just bolted in. So when you put your screws in there, you got to make sure that you don't go too deep. So you got the 2 short screws here in the middle, because it's real thin. And you got the 2 longer screws on the outside edges. So these are my short screws here, and a thick one. So this looks like that's probably the next longest one. These 2 here are the longest ones here. They go in the front. They go right here where it's nice and thick, so they don't bottom out against anything. So this just slips underneath that weld right there. Almost like it was made to do that, huh? It just comes up, you bolt in right here, and it's done. So 4 screws there, 2 in the front. It's mounted. It sits almost flush here, so you can roll it around on the floor and it won't matter. It just rubs against it. Or on the workbench or whatever. So it's pretty straightforward. As this is diamond screen, so as the oil hits it, it's supposed to suck it into it. That was a theory back in the 90s and 80s, but since then they found out this doesn't work all that good. It's better to have louvers, because louvers grab the oil, scoop it out in large volume, and dump it in the oil pan. So, but it's still better not having anything. The biggest thing is it keeps the oil that's under here from bouncing up into the crank. That's your biggest problem. So, alright, we'll go ahead and Loctite these screws up and get them bolted in. Okay, I got my screen in there. Now I'm working on the oil pump. So I just lubricate it, pre-lube it, put some oil on both sides here, feed side and return side over here. So it's all lubed. Put a little oil in the gear also. So it just slips on in there like that. And you put your little screws that go in there, through here. Stick it all together. The gasket to go where it belongs helps. There we go. Tools over here. A little bit. I always like to rock it and center it up a little bit. Just put it between the 2 hole, the clearances in there. I'm just going to torque it down a little bit each way. Okay, we'll give it a final torque in a couple minutes. So that gives us the pumps now on there. So now I'm going to go ahead and get up my gears and stuff here for the cams and get the cam cover in there. So I'll come back when I get that in there. Okay, getting ready to put this together here. You can see how my self-aligning bearing goes in there. unlike the stock stuff that goes in there. It's nice and free here. There's no drag at all. Alright, so the pump is there. Now, before you put these gears in here, you gotta remember these things go in a certain way. This one here has a timing mark on it. Oop. Right there. This has a timing mark on it here, which you cannot see once you put the nut on it, because the nut goes right there and hides it. So you can't tell if it's in time or not time. A lot of times these things are not put in right. Now you have 6 splines on the shaft here, and you only got 1 notch in there. See? And of course, this gear goes on 6 different ways. See? So you can be off quite a bit. If you're off 1 notch, it doesn't run. So now the oil pump gear doesn't matter how you put it in. It just goes in there. It's driving the pump. Oop, pull back a little. Now you can see the wear I got on my teeth here from all the abusive stuff I put through my oil pump. That would be called like shrapnel. So this gear is getting pretty worn. It doesn't really matter how it goes on. It just goes on. Of course, the motor falls down when you don't want it to. That's usually how it works. Alright, put this down for a second. Chase does not want to stay on blocks. So I'm just going to fall again here pretty soon. Alright, so now we have the oil pump engaged. So see how it rotates around there. In one direction it comes off, the other direction it sucks on. See? And it turns nice and free, that's the key. Of course it doesn't hurt to have some oil on this, so see now I have abused the hell out of this thing. I might as well put a little bit of oil on this thing. Of course I'm going to get oil with my fingers. It's always fun to work with one hand. Alright. Get that all worked in nice and free. Okay, so now we're back to our timing mark. Here's 1 can gear. Make sure it lines up with your notch right there. Looking light. So see notch. See notch. See notch, notch. Right in. Now, sometimes you can almost tell by looking at it, there's a notch up in there. It lines up. But usually once you put the gear on there, it's really hard to tell anything. Now, I always put Loctite on this because I don't like that stupid lock washer they give you. Lock tab is more accurate. So, see, it looks kind of like this but smaller because this is the one for your transmission sprocket. Because I don't use it. If I do use it, I don't use one with a tab on, I use it just as a washer. Okay, you put that on there like that. And we make sure we got threads all the way down. So we get full torque on this thing. Yes, we are. So otherwise I'll put a washer on there. You see, once you have that on there, you can't see the mark on the spline anymore. Of course, I use the appropriate Harley torque. Yes, tight. Now you have to know your air tools. That air tool will put out 150 foot-pounds of torque. So I just put that on there, probably over 100. Anything over 50 is adequate. Okay, so now it's all in there. Now that's very important to get that done right or you have lots of problems. Just like put my Loctite away so I don't get crap in it. Okay, now here's our cans over here. And then being a single cylinder race bike, we do things a little different here. So the first thing is, these are stock Sportster cans here. The only reason they're even in here is to drive my tack. That's my tack drive. So tack drive is driven off of can. See right there, tack drive. So you have to have cans for tack drive to work. So very important that you have that. So once these get put up in there, you're good to go. Here, I want to put a little lubricant on here. I don't want the washer to be dry. The washer, of course, is sitting right there, and it just jammed itself in a spot you can't get it out of. Once again, I work on one hand again. Now you got timing marks right here. Now, even though it doesn't really matter, I still like timing stuff. It doesn't matter if I'm off by a tooth like I am right now, but you know, it doesn't take much to fix the problem. Just pull down, move the tooth. Yeah, now it's lined up. Now these other ones here, these are the racing cams. Now they actually do matter how they go in, so it's kind of important. You see how the lifter's getting away here. So this is going to be a two-handed operation here pretty quickly. Okay, now these cams here are a little bit bigger than stock. These are ones you cut off and put where you want them and weld them back on. These are red shifts. They don't make that grind no more. Looks like it's a 625 is what they called it. This one here is a 723 on this one. So obviously they're a little bit different. The only thing is I think they look the same as I remember. I have to check them now. Anyway, you gotta go ahead and lubricate all these bushings up. Lubricate your shaft here, your seal. Make sure everything's all lubed up. Now you also know I don't run a bushing in here, I got a needle bearing. And then I have a real seal on to seal the crank to get oil pressure. So like I said, on race motors you do things a little bit differently than normal. Okay, this is going to be a two-handed job, so no more filming. But I'll come back here in a minute and show you the timing marks. Alright, actually measure the cam lift there just for shits and giggles. So, one cam lifts 418 pounds, the other one lifts 423 pounds. So, multiply that by your rocker ratio and you get the number you want. So, most Sportster cams are lucky to lift 420 on their own with a rocker. Not with just a cam lobe. You multiply by that 1.425 and that'll give you true lift for an iron head. 1.6 is for an Evo. These are Evo cams. Oh well. I think that 625 was an iron head cam though. The other one's an Evo cam. Evo big twin cam. Alright, so these marks here, if you look at them, they're not really lined up very closely. See how they're always like half a tooth off? So you never know where you're supposed to be. Do you move it down one tooth and put it there? But look how far off this one over here is. It's not even close. If you line up this one here accurately, then this one here is way the hell off over here. So you got to kind of guess where these things go. It's always a shitty design. But that's how they do it with stock cams. Aftermarket cams, they give you better marks that line up with each other. But you get the best you can. So if you look at it right now, they're relatively in line with each other. And if you look at this, this mark is lined up 180 on the center line between the two cams. Sometimes you got to do it over here, but most of the time it's back in this area. And like I said, these other ones are the same way. They don't really line up either. See how that one goes in and out of time depending on where you got the crank. So when you have this crank, when you got all these marks here all lined up over here, this one here is pretty far off. But it's the same thing. You just kind of go for it and average it. You can always check the cam timing with how your valves work at top dead center. On the overlap stroke, they should be about equal lift on most cams. So if your piston's all the way up and on the overlap stroke and your valves are still uneven in lift, then more likely your cam's off a tooth. That's how you do a quick check. Okay, so I got these in here. I'm going to go ahead and lubricate all this stuff and then put this thing together. Alright, I had to come back and work on this a little bit here. I went in and put a new point seal inside of here, or cam seal, some people call them down in there. And when I did that, I tore my gasket a little bit, so I had to put a new gasket on here. So this gasket here has been on there for years, the one I had on it. So what you do on the race bike is you take sealer and you seal the gasket to your cam cover here. And then you put assembly oil across this surface here so you can pull it on and off your motor 100 times without destroying your gasket. So that way you don't have to reuse you can reuse your gasket indefinitely for quite a while until you tear it. So that's what I just did. So I'm going to go ahead now and bolt this thing all back up on there and I'll be done with it. Okay, I got this all together down here now. Put my ignition in there, got the cams all in it obviously. Turns nice and freely there, as you can tell. So, I got my racing ignition in here. Kind of guessed on the timing. If you line those lines up, it'd be 40 degrees, so I gave another little extra, so hopefully it'll be about 50 degrees or maybe 55. At least 50 would be nice. If I got time to time it, I'll do it. Otherwise, we'll just run it the way it is. So there's the oil pump all up under there. The ignition wires in there. So you can see how this all works here pretty nice and freely. Just the whole cam chest is in there and it turns over relatively nicely. I was talking about that cam timing before. See right now the push rods are going up and down together here. So you kind of get them about equal. And then you have an idea about where you're at. You can figure out where the cam lift is on this model. So that's about in the middle. And you can see where the rod is kind of centered up a little bit in the hole over there. So that tells me my cam time is relatively close to being correct. If you were a tooth off down here, you would be either way over here or you'd be way back over here. You'd be way off the center in your rod over there. So that's a quick way of telling what you got. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the tranny in here before I throw this back in the frame. So it's easier to do it now, make sure everything's in there correctly. This was pretty straightforward, there's not a lot of parts, but I got 6 bolts that hold it together, and a shift shaft, and then we got a cluster assembly here. So this is all set up for racing, so it's highly modified. The shift dogs are right on top of each other. You can pretty much touch the gears either way on both sides. See how close they are right there and right up on top. So it doesn't give you a lot before you're in the next gear. So we got a cast iron trap door on this thing. Yep. Flip it around. So there's the door. This one's set up for electric only. It doesn't have the cutaway in here for a kicker. But it's an older style because it only has a single ball bearing, not a double row ball bearing in here. Usually when it's electric start only, they have a double row ball, but Troc never made them that way. The billet aluminum ones are made that way. I've cut this thing out and put oversized bearings in here. So I use the same bearing on both sides on the counter shafts here, big fat ones. And then for the main shaft here, I've turned this down and it puts in that big ball bearing in there. So I don't have to worry about loose rollers or anything. And to get up to that size bearing there, you got to put a sleeve on your low gear here to sleeve it up. And this is a needle bearing low gear out of a 87 liter Sportster 4-speed. So that'd be 87 to 90. And see how the washer got a little heat in it from high RPM running. This gear probably spins up to about 30,000 RPM when you're buzzing the piss out of this thing. Turn this thing up to 8,500 RPM. So anyway, it's pretty free, works pretty good. Got an this one has an 18 tooth clutch gear over here, so it's a close ratio C box. My other bike's got a 19 tooth over here, so it's really close ratio. So it makes it hard to get off the line, but once you're on the cam, it goes through gears pretty nicely. So anyway, it's pretty highly modified. So they got no loose washers that fall out, no loose bearings. It just slams in and out real easy. I put a couple extra holes in here to hold 2 more bolts. So we've added these 2. These 4 here are the regular ones. Of course, these have all been helicoiled up so I can torque the snot out of them. So pretty straightforward. So you can see a lot of welding been done. So a lot of reinforcements. Alright, we're going to throw this thing in here, and then we'll throw this thing into the bike. Okay, here's the tranny all in there. I just got done running up through the gears, make sure it shifts fine. See how nicely it turns. That side's not turning, this one is. This one has a lot of oil on it, so it's a little thicker, but it turns freely. So that's what you want to do. Be nice and free. Of course, you have adequate in play. Clunk, clunk, clunk. Okay, so this is all ready to go into the bike now. So I'm going to take all this crap over here. And I'm going to throw it into the chassis over here. So I got to wad this thing up, stuff her into the frame over here. Make sure the wires are out of the way. Frame's been modified just a little bit. So I run a big single 1/2 inch bolt in here for holding my motor in the frame. See right there. And I just run the 2 regular case bolts here, so it goes in there like this. So it makes it easy to put together. And mine, I take a shim between here and the mount to center it, so that's why I leave it laying there. Bolts for holding it together. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this thing and manhandle it into the chassis here. Stuff it up in here and then put our bolts in it. So that's my bolt down there for going up high here. This one goes into there. So you take your bike apart, you leave all the bolts right where you can get to them. So boom, you go right in there. Now this one here, I've threaded it deeper and helicoiled it. Can strip it out one year finally. And I have that much thread going into there, so it's got a lot of thread. So I can torque the snot out of it. And we got the other bolts laying down here, which are way too long. They're about this much too long, but you have to pull a fuel tank to get them out, so they're staying in. So anyway, so let me go ahead and stuff that thing up in there, and we'll come back when we got it inside the chassis here. Alright, we got the motor into the frame now. Now I got to figure out where all the stuff goes. I forgot. So all these oil lines I got to deal with here. There's a big pile over there too. Anyway, I know what this one is. So this one here, the only one that left, is the pickup. Comes off our oil pan right here. So this thing here is going to go into here. And it's going to work its way through all this crap up to our hole up here. This big one here goes up the top one right there. Actually, this little one here is the one that goes there. Where does this one go to? I forget. We'll have to figure it out. It goes someplace. Too many holes. Let's see here. Oh, dumb shit. It goes to here, the oil pump. So this one goes up to here. So this one here comes off the oil pan here and it goes into the pump here. So that means this one here somehow has to snake in through here and get fitted in there. So we'll have to figure that out. So it takes me a few minutes to figure things out because I forget over time. And then of course we got the nitrous solenoid sitting down here in the way too. So everything is jammed in where there's no room for anything. So anyway, you can see how things are all jammed in there. Even got a washer laying in there right now. It must have fell out of something and probably came out of this hole up here. But, alright, I'm going to figure all this out, get it all bolted in there, and then we'll come back. Okay, I got a couple things done. So I got the motor mounted into the frame more or less. Semi-mock up. It's kind of tightened up where it belongs, but this upper motor mount is not even close anymore. I don't know what's going on. These cylinder studs here were really binding up everything else, so I had to recut the plate a little bit. So it's forcing the cylinder. It had to be in a certain position. Obviously it's different than what it was, so now this is not fitting. I had to add a shim down here, one more shim, but 2 small shims, not 1 washer. I got all the hoses fixed up, hooked up. The plumbing's all in here, it's all wired. So all this is all hooked up, so this whole oil pump system's in here, the oil pan's up in here now. Obviously got the clutch primer and drive in there. So all these oil lines are hooked up. The nitrous is not hooked up yet, but that's fuel, so we'll worry about that later. I just lay that on to keep the hole up, plugged up. So, like I said, I'm going to have to spend a few hours up here dicking around this. I might have to wind up cutting the whole damn thing off and re-welding it. See the air in there right now? The bolts still don't fit. So something is completely different than what it was. So we'll have to figure that out. Anyway, everything else is all hooked up here. These are in here just lightly torqued, not much. 5 foot-pounds, 10 foot-pounds maybe. So, but all this is in. This front motor mount's all pulled in tight. So, the motor's where I want it. It's just a matter of making this up here fit. So I'll probably going to tighten this stuff down back here, and then we'll start playing with this and see what I'm going to do to make it fit. It's going to take a lot of work. I want to do one final mock-up with the valve train before I put the head and stuff on here for real. One final check just to make sure everything's good. But other than that, looks like the motor mount's going to be our biggest pain in the ass right now. So we'll see. We'll work on it some more tomorrow.